I have a new area today. So this is outside. It's just a little bit too, I mean, it's a little bit too sunny, just a tad sunny. So I think what I need is a table with like a little umbrella over it so that I just don't have quite so much glare. But I mean, the sun is like right over here, so it makes sense. But it's like the first warm day, and I was like, oh my God, thank goodness I finally get to use this ocean background. Um, so that's Oodle Laddie, very exciting. But first things first, let me just make sure that we are there. Okay, I want to make sure that we're actually streaming because last time we had that sitch. Remember where it didn't actually go live, and then I was sitting there talking, and everyone's like, "Hey, listen, you're not live." Okay, but can you hear me? Quite so much. Oh my God, you can hear me, and the sound is not bad either. That's pretty cool. All right, I'm digging it. I'm digging this. Let's pause it because I'm not. That we are there. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm actually quite impressed with the sound on this. Is there a bug on my ear? That's the other problem with being outside. You never know if there's a bug on you or not. Alrighty. Wow, it has been like a crazy, crazy weekend. Very, very profound. I had a lot of great realizations about my life. I feel like I got over a really big hump that I've sort of been stuck in. I've been stuck in like a little bit of a funk for a little while, so I felt like I jumped out of that. So that was absolutely amazing. And then I started reading this really great book. I just realized also that my eyes are closed, and I'm probably going to do this whole podcast with my eyes closed because it's so sunny. I was reading this really great book called The Invisible Women, and it's so interesting because it's actually about the gender data gap, which I thought was like super fascinating in that women are not considered when some of the most fundamental decisions are being made about business infrastructure, life infrastructure, in the most small and insidious ways. Our entire history has been told from the perspective of dudes, which is not a big deal in and of itself. I mean, we all know this, we talk about it all the time. Like, this is not news to a lot of us. However, this book was super interesting in that it really allowed me to see how there are even more little systems in place that may keep women in a position where it is harder for us to achieve, harder for us to get where we're going, harder for us to get results, harder for us to get jobs, harder for us to make more money. It's harder for us to do pretty much anything because the infrastructure is set up to make it difficult for us. Now, I'm about, a few chapters into the book, but and there's a whole lot of things that she talks about, but the key area in that for me was really that it is very much in alignment with what we've been talking about already over the last several years, in that the way in which we have traditionally been taught to run our businesses is not a way that works for many of us. For a lot of us, we are chronically ill. You're caregivers for people who are chronically ill, or you're just the caregiver for your house. Like, forget about the chronic illness stuff. You're the woman, and therefore you're responsible for most of the caregiving activities in the house, as is typical for most of the houses in the United States. And as a result, it makes the typical timelines that people talk about for like building a business or solving problems or making money or so on, it makes those timelines inapplicable to us because we are met with different challenges. And as a result, we feel like it's a problem with us as women, like we're the problem, right? So collectively, I found with my audience and myself that we do tend to look at ourselves in a not the greatest light ever when it comes to our achievements and our accomplishments for a variety of reasons. So as I was reading this book, I was like, wow, this really does hit upon some very key things that are, I'm going to be really honest with you right now. I think I have to go inside, and here's why. Because the sun is really bright. I want to be outside, and it's really nice, but I'm finding it really hard to concentrate because the sun is so bright in my eyes. And so whereas I thought this was a really good idea to begin with, I'm actually going to go into the bedroom because this wasn't a really good idea. This was not a good idea for today. It's too sunny. And I think that it's making it actually hard for me to concentrate. So as I'm talking, I'm like second guessing everything that's coming out of my mouth because the sun is literally in my face. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clip my thingy to this. I'm going to clip my thingy to this, and then we're going to go inside. Because this is the kind of person that I am. We're just going to fix it on the fly, everybody. There we go. So what did you do today with Vanessa? Well, we started off on the beach, and then she was like, it's too sunny. I actually had a meeting earlier today, though, that was not quite so sunny. Can you open the door? Are you on camera? I'm on camera. It's facing me. And only me. There we go. Only me. Only me. See? Oh my God, this is so fun. I'm also kind of concerned because I can't see any comments here. All right, which makes me wonder. People are like, what is she doing? What is happening in this place? All right. Okay. We're back to normal now. Okay. And we're back in the bedroom again. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to do it the other way. Okay. Hey. Hi. Good morning. There we go. Now I can concentrate. Oh, I feel so much better now. Okay. All right. Fabulous. Hello, hello. Good morning. And now that I can concentrate, I am Vanessa Konecki, your host. I am also gigantic. So today we're going to be talking about this idea that you have to have everything figured out before you get started to do anything in your business, actually. This is something that actually came up in a conversation we had in office hours yesterday. So let me tell you a story about my life, everybody. This story is that I have really today. Yeah, you're not seeing. Well, then maybe there aren't any comments. That's fine too. But I see you. I see you. Hello. This has been what a morning, right? Okay. Ta-da! We did it. Okay. All right. So what are we talking about today? All right. So here's what we're talking about today. Now that we're inside, everything's normal. So yesterday in the social strategy squad, we in office hours, which we do every week. So every Tuesday we all get together. I host a coaching call where anyone who wants to ask any question about their business can come in and ask any question that they want. So it's kind of like having, like, not everybody wants to hire a coach for like a full hour. Like sometimes they just have a question that they just want to ask, and it is challenging if you're, if you're like, I just have one question and I have to buy an hour with you. It can be very, very challenging. So office hours is something that we added into the social strategy squad so that if you just had a question that you wanted to ask a coach, you could just come and ask, right? But not every day is going to have questions. And sometimes we get together and we start talking about things and a question will emerge. And yesterday something came up that I thought was super, super powerful, in that many of my clients approach their each new activity that they're going to do, if they're about to learn something new, with this idea that they have to know all the things about it before they get started. And as we were talking about this, I was like, I actually remember myself, and I remember when I realized that this was what I was doing and how it was holding me back. And it's been a while, and I was surprised that I even forgot that I used to do that, because it's been a while since I did it. But I remember that there was a time when, before I would do anything, so before I would write a course, before I would, use a new email system, before I would, go live, I would need to know everything about it. So I need to know, like, okay, I get the camera and understand the software and understand the platform that I'm using and what I need to say. So I needed to understand every aspect of it, how everything works, how everything fits together. Like, I need to be able to see the full jigsaw puzzle. And then and only then would I get started. Now, the problem with that for me that I realized was that so first I had to learn email. So I spent all this time learning email. And then as I was getting started to writing emails, then I realized, okay, wait, I need to know how to write emails. So I was like, okay, I can't write the emails now. I'm going to put that aside. Now I need to learn how to write them. So now I'm starting to learn how to write them. Okay, so now that's going to take some time. I still haven't gotten my emails out. So that's still not happening at this point. I'm still learning something. So then I'm like, okay, I've learned how to write the emails and I now know how to do emails, right? So I've got both of those things there. And it's like, okay, I've done that part. Now, how often should I send them? Okay, so now I have to know that, and then I have to know something else. So every time I got started with something like that, I'd have to know all the things about it. And what that means is that so let's say I get an email list, and I decide I want to do my email list, and I start it and I do it, right? I start sending an email tomorrow. Let's say it's not the greatest email in the world, but I start sending emails tomorrow. That means I start seeing results and progress immediately, right? But if I have to figure it all out beforehand, then I'm not going to see progress. I'm just going to be sitting here dreaming things and feeling more and more behind. when I started to realize that I had been doing that over and over and over again, the stagnation that I had created suddenly made a lot of sense, because I had actually chosen to stagnate by approaching my business in this way. And so for me, that was super scary, because I had to know how to do these things before I did them. I don't know how to do anything differently. And so for me, that was a very terrifying space to be in. I did not know how to change from being someone who had to know all the things in advance and how everything was going to be mapped out. I didn't know how to change from being that person to being the person who was just try something and see what happened, and try something and see what happened, and try something and see what happened. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't even know if I wanted to be that person. That seemed so scary to me and unpleasant. But over the years, having worked with thousands of business owners, what I've learned is that you kind of have to do it that way. There is no actual other way you can do it. And that the belief system that I have to have it all figured out first, that was the problem. In order to be successful in business, you actually have to come to the other side. That was what it really inspired me. And I was like, this is a really great conversation to have, because how many of us never get started because we're just so busy trying to figure out what the lay of the land is, that 2 years later, we're still drawing the map and we don't really know where we're going, because we can't get started. So it was a really, really exciting thing to talk about. Oh, wait a minute. Where am I? I see some viewers here. Where have I gone live? Am I live in the squad? Where on earth am I live? I just want to check, because we have some viewers, so I want to make sure that I see you. Hey, hello. How weird. I'm seeing all kinds of weird things right now in terms of this live, just FYI. So I see only comments from like one person, literally just one person right now. And I know there's more because you're talking to each other. So like I can see that. Okay, there we go. I can see because we can't get started. So it was a really, really exciting thing to go. Okay, there you go. Let's pause this. Alrighty. Okay. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off. I just realized I need to turn off my filter because I think my green screen is on and it looks ridiculous. There we go. I was like, what is that? Why is my face so weird right now? Okay. I'm live on my page and in the squad. Wow. So I'm live on my page. Okay. I'm live on both. I'm going to be happy with this. I'm just going to have to figure out who everybody is then. No worries. This is how we all learn. Let's do this thing. Okay. So Stephanie Rogers is in the squad. LaFern is on the page. Good morning, Anne. So good to see you. Okay. So, that 30 looks like that does look like a tongue, does it? That's what I was thinking also. Absolutely. And Dee Dee said that she was thinking this when she was doing her IG live today. Absolutely, absolutely. So this is something that's really, really common for us. And so what I wanted to do today was talk about how this happens. And well, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm going to record it. We're going to roll with it, and we'll see. What we can see in the end. Getting this information out is way more important than anything else. Perfect, LaFern, you're on the page for sure. Dee Dee, I think you are in the squad because I see you as viewer. And then, Anne, you're on YouTube. Rock on, Anne, seeing us on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. You're amazing. I just got to say, I'm in all three places. I kind of like that. I can dig being in all three places. Okay. So moving forward with this though. So today we're going to be talking about that. So just, so you know how we tend to do this is I'm going to clap my hands. We're going to go live and then I'm not going to be looking at the screen. I'm actually going to be just looking at my notes while I do the podcast. And then you guys talk amongst yourselves, because some of these things are going to resonate with you. Some of you may be like, yeah, that I tried this worked for me. That happened to me when I was a kid. Any of those things, share whatever your stories are, because I'm going to come back, look at your comments, and then we're going to have a conversation afterwards about this. Okay. All right. So hi, Laura. Hello. Good to see you. Alrighty, totally cool to just watch, totally cool to just listen. I love having all of you here. It's fabulous. One thing I do want to remind you guys is that today we're going to be talking about something that's actually going to help a huge number of your friends, your family, community members. These are the things that we're talking about are not just related to business. They're also related to like how we feel about ourselves in business. So if you have someone who is struggling, who feels less than, like they feel like they should be doing all the things and they aren't, I strongly recommend that you get this sort of in their feeds, because just sort of these ideas starting to get exposed to these ideas, ultimately they may explore them elsewhere. They may get, introduce the idea with me, and then 6 months later they're following someone totally different. They don't even know who Manessa Konecki is, but they're following the idea. That's really the most important thing. So as many people as we can get the seeds of these ideas in there, it doesn't really matter where they ultimately get all their information. We just need to make sure that we are empowering as many women as possible to feel capable, strong, and beautiful. So please, please, please make sure that you get this in the feeds of your friends, the women in your life who you feel would benefit from this kind of conversation. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna get going. Let's hit the show on the road, and bam. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Stop Shooting All Over Yourself podcast. I am Manessa Konecki, your host. I'm a business strategist with over 25 years of experience working with business owners in crisis to help them get back on track. Like many of my clients, I used to hustle all the time and give myself shit about not getting things done and constantly worrying about the progress that I was making in my business. It wasn't until I dropped all my preconceptions about business and helped my clients do the same that I realized that I was holding myself back with those antiquated business ideas that I had brought with me over the last several decades. Join me today as we dig into a belief that many of us have held very dear, very, very dear to our hearts. The idea that we need to know what it is that we're doing before we start doing it. We need to know all the things about what it is that we're going to do before we start doing it. Now, in episode 19, Perfectionism is Bad for Business, we talked about how perfectionism keeps us from getting started. But that is not the only thing. Sadly, as women, we've been subjected to a lot of different types of programming and ideas that work together to keep us locked into inaction. This is further complicated and made even more challenging if you have one of the plus ones. Plus one being you're a woman plus a person of color, you're a woman plus have a chronic illness. If you have anything, you're a woman plus anything else, it gets even more challenging because of the systems that exist that make it very, very challenging for us to get feel like we have the same opportunities to get ahead as everyone else. Now, in today's episode, I really want to talk more about an invisible problem, and it has a very, very real world consequence for women entrepreneurs. Now, I'm reading a book right now called Invisible Women that basically talks about the data gap that exists in terms of the information that people gather on surveys for deciding how they build roads and deciding, what kind of where to put seatbelts or how to engage safety features. Right? They take a lot of surveys, they do a lot of tests, but almost all of these surveys, tests, and experiments that they do are often actually done mostly on men and mostly with men. So they're all designed for dudes. Now, this isn't new. This is something that we've been talking about for a while on how we are programmed as women. I mean, this conversation has been going on for decades. Feminists, long, long before me have been having this conversation. However, I want to bring it in to talk specifically about it related to this avenue in business and how it impacts us, because these bigger picture ideas and like the systemic issues, those are very important, but that's not my area of strength because there's a lot of other people doing work in there that they're doing their own work there. For me, I really like to focus on taking what those bigger ideas, how do they impact us on a very small level on the things that we do on the day to day so that we can figure out how to make our lives better within whatever it is that exists out there. Now, for example, we know that as women, we are less likely to apply for a job. But did you know that if the language of the job is written to be gendered, so as in like using male pronouns or like even gender neutral pronouns, women will not apply. If you do him/her, if you do him, them, women will not apply because they do not feel like they are welcome to apply or that they're qualified or that job is for them. We are more likely to not even look at a job because of some words that make us feel the wrong way when we see them. And the wrong way is really the words that say you are not invited into this space because this is for dudes. Now, this is not something that happens maliciously. Nobody is out there trying to exclude women on purpose. I'm sure there's people out there who are doing that, but in this particular conversation, we're just going to take for granted that this isn't intentional. This isn't malicious. This is just the system that exists out there. And it is important to know that it exists so we can know how to work within it, right? Ignoring it doesn't make it easier for you to work within the system and make sure that you're leveraging the things that you can. Now, this doesn't just apply to the job market or what you're doing in corporate, right? So like we know that we're not going to ask for raises. We know that we tend to undervalue ourselves and undercut ourselves. We know that if there is a job that says that you need 10 years of experience and we only have 5, we won't apply as women, but guys will apply because that's just what guys do. They will apply, but women will not, right? We will not take action if we feel like we are not explicitly being invited to the party. This is very, very common. Now, even for women like me and like you, who may have areas in our lives where we're very, very empowered, right? There are still other areas where that is not the case, where we still tend to make ourselves small, right? Now, though this is, thank you, though this is a, I don't know why I did that. This is a podcast recording. I shouldn't have said thank you. Laura can delete that. This doesn't just apply in the job market or what you're doing in corporate, because the way in which we are, the things that we learn as we're growing up, we just learn them and we see them, and then we just take them into wherever it is that we go. So even though a lot of people see these things happening in corporate, these same ideas impact us as business owners as well, right? We take those same lessons into business owners. And here's how this happens. Like, so what we bring in is that in order for us to feel like we are capable of doing something, we need to make sure we know everything on the list. We know we can check off all of the boxes, and this is why we don't apply for jobs, right? Because if we look at a job and we see that there's 10 things on there and we can do 7 and 3 we can't, we won't apply because we don't know those 3, right? The 3 things that we don't know. That is what we tend to do when we apply for these jobs. And in business, how that manifests is that if we don't know everything about whatever it is that we're going to do, we don't start doing it, right? Now, I want to talk briefly about why we do this, okay? Because why we do this is going to be very important in terms of how we break the habit. The reason why we tend to want to know everything about whatever it is that we're going to start, right? So I am seeing an intimacy coach because I want to get better at sex, right? And so I met with her and I'm like, I want to learn how to do all these things. And I'm giving her this list. And it was through my work with her that I started to realize that even though I had unprogrammed myself in other places, I couldn't even have fun having sex because it was all about making sure that I knew everything that was going to happen and what I was going to do. And it was so serious and I was so methodical about everything that was going to happen. It was very interesting to see that permeate into other parts of my life, even though it doesn't exist in my business anymore. I don't have that fear in my business anymore. Now, how this happens is, think about yourself as a child, okay? So when your child you is hanging out, there are so many unrealistic expectations put upon girls when they were growing up. Now, I cannot speak to children for today, but I can speak for my childhood, and I can speak for the women who grew up with the Gen Xers who grew up with me, and probably 10 years, 10 to 20 years before, and probably 10 to 20 years after, right? So that whole general vibe of girls growing up, we had impossible to achieve metrics of be quiet, sit down, be still, but also make sure that you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, anticipate needs, don't toot your own horn, but you also have to make sure that you're getting the promotions and the things that you want. You hear these conversations happening in your house that women are supposed to check off, make sure that the dinner is ready, but also go to work. You're supposed to bring in money and also take care of the kids. You have to get people to the hospital, but you're also responsible for being at work 40 hours a week, but you don't get promoted because you go and have to take care of the kids. There are so many things that we see growing up. We saw these messages on TV, our parents, our parents' friends. This is what life was like growing up in the 80s and the 90s. There's no judgment here, but it does have an impact on how you grow up and the things that you think about as you're growing up. So for many of us, for a lot of us, there's one big thing that we never want to be. We never want to be lazy. Never be lazy. So you always have to be doing something. So don't be lazy, right? You always have to be doing something. But at the same time, we're getting a lot of messages now that are like self-care, self-care, self-care. And so we have all of these conflicting messages, and it's really hard to feel like you're doing anything right. So I started to feel a while back like I just couldn't do anything right. It just felt like there was this list of things that I was supposed to do in all the roles of my life, wife, sister, daughter, dog mom, business owner, employee. And there just was this impossible list of all of these things that, like, you had to dress a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to talk a certain way, there's just so many things that were required, right? That the only way that I had to feel like I wasn't doing anything wrong was, could you just give me a list of all the things it is that I'm supposed to do? And then I'm going to look at this list, and then I'm going to be able to check it off. And then that way, thank God, because I'm not asking to be told that I was amazing. I just didn't want to constantly feel like I was wrong or that I was doing something wrong. And so as a kid and as I'm growing up, that became my security blanket. My security blanket became, give me the list. I need to know all of the steps, all of the things that I need to do. That way I can check them off and I can be sure I won't miss anything. I can be sure that I'm not going to fail in my grade, right? I'm not going to, like, I can show that I was applying myself. Like, these are all things that I brought in from my childhood. All these things I brought in, and you brought them as well, right? Now, here is the problem. That, for us, for many years, gave us the lay of the land. It allowed us to see the landmines in our way. And to be frank, for a lot of us, it wasn't perfectly successful, but it kept us safe this long and we're still alive, right? Here's the problem. That works until it doesn't anymore, because eventually it doesn't work anymore. And about 5 years ago in 2017, what I realized was that I had painted myself into a corner, because I went from having to know the plan to being in a point where if I didn't know everything, I simply could not leave the house. I became paralyzed with indecision. It became like, this is before COVID. It became more about like, if I didn't know what was going to happen when I walked out of the house, where I would go, who I was going to see. Oh my God, what if I run into somebody? It started to permeate in other areas of my life. And my world started to get much, much, much smaller, like really, really small. Now, my intimacy coach, Miss L, during one of our coaching sessions, she said this to me. It was so brilliant. She said, sex problems aren't sex problems. They're problems that exist within yourself or within your dynamic or within your relationship that manifest in the bedroom. And I was like, wow, that is so brilliant, because the truth is that is true for business as well. A lot of business problems aren't business problems. They are problems that exist and challenges that exist within us that manifest themselves in our business. And until you deal with whatever it is that's manifesting inside, you're not going to be able to sort out your problems in your business. And so for a lot of us, we think that if we do the email and if we figure out the right chatbots and if we figure out, the right social media platform for us and all of those things, we think that that's going to be enough for us to actually start to see the results that we're looking for. But we don't realize that there's a lot of internal work that has to happen to support these activities that you're doing in your business as well. James Wedmore says that every quantum leap is preceded by an enormous amount of internal work and effort done on the inside, and I have found that to be true myself. So if we're talking about, now that we've sort of laid down the lay of the land here, the question is like, what is the specific business problem, right? What is the problem that we have? And the problem that exists, and again, I don't want this to come off as male bashing, because it's really not. This isn't about anybody doing this on purpose. It's not about, saying that dudes are bad and women are good. It's really just about understanding that most of the work that has been done to date on business education, on philosophy, history, a lot of the work that has been done historically has been done by men. And men bring male perspectives because they're men. Like, they don't have another perspective, and that's okay, right? But they bring the perspective that they have. And for the most part, it's cisgendered white men. So that is a very singular perspective. Now, again, without any judgment at all, now that we know that this is the case, how does this impact us in business? Well, because it is male centered, we are now programmed by ideas of masculinity. So for example, I'm going to give you a really, really interesting example that's from the book, Invisible Women. So she talks about how the infrastructure of your city and public transportation and snow removal is set up for men. How does that happen? It's because when people are deciding how to do snow removal, the person who's deciding that is a guy, and usually a group of men, and then they're deciding when in the day the snow is going to be removed from streets, from walkways, right, from pavement, from sidewalks, things like that, right, from public transportation areas, stuff like that, right? Who is deciding that? It's men. What is important to most men in terms of statistics, right, is that most men drive to work more often than women do, okay? Women are more likely to take public transportation. And as a result, because men are more likely to drive to work, the streets get higher priority for snow removal than sidewalks in a lot of these cities. And how that manifests then is that in countries and cities where they do not apply gendered snow removal, which is making sure that you're looking at what the women are doing as well as what the men are doing, right? Because women are more likely to take public transportation. Women are more likely to have strollers or have things that they're pushing and stuff that they have with them, right? When in countries and cities where they have implemented gendered snow removal, okay, they have less emergency room accidents in the hospitals. And so they're saving money on that side because a lot of the accidents happen from slips and falls on the sidewalk because the snow is not being removed on time. And most of the people who are suffering from those injuries are women. Okay. So that is one very completely random example, completely outside of what you would expect, right? That I threw out there and said, okay, because there's a bunch of men who are deciding when snow is removed, it has a cascading impact on the number of emergency room visits that women have during the winter months. Who knew, right? Who knew? So if something like that is possible when you look at the data and you see that that's something that can happen, how are we being impacted on this smaller level? Well, if a guy is saying that, listen, you need to be able to work nonstop, you need to be able to work late into the night and get up early in the morning, which I saw a post just the other day by Russell Brunson that said that. It said, if you want to fight, if you want to chase your dreams and grab your dreams, you need to get up super early and stay up super late. And I screenshotted that because I thought it was such a bad piece of advice. It is such a bad piece of advice, but it is the piece of advice that you can give if you are not the primary caregiver of children, if you are not the one who is responsible for driving people to place to place to place, which allows you to lose 40, 50 minutes, sometimes 2 hours of your day, right? All of these things eat into your business. They eat into your life. The messages, however, that we're seeing out there are telling us that you should be able to do this. You should be able to run a super successful business and also do all these things as a woman. The people who tend to send those messages are men, okay? Because men who do not have any caregiving responsibilities, right? So now we can, like I said, people can rally and rail and make systemic change, and that's really, really important. But for us, how do we fix this here, right? So every time we do something that is that we have come up with the metrics based off of what the world says we should do, right? So for example, if you are not waking up earlier than everybody else and going to bed after everybody else, and you're not getting the results that you want in your business, well, then obviously that's why, right? So get up earlier and go to bed later, the end, right? So let's say we accept that as truth. Well, if we accept that as truth, then we're not, then, and you are not able to do that, then you feel like a failure. That further reinforces your belief that you are not enough, that you are not good enough, that you are not capable of doing this, okay? So now we feel like we have to prove that we can do this. And how do we prove that we can do this? We make sure that we do it right. And how do we make it right? We make sure that we make a list of all the things that we need to do. We make sure that we know the whole lay of the land, and then we check off the boxes as we go, and that keeps us from even getting started, right? So now here we are sitting here, we haven't even gotten started, and we feel like, oh my God, they were right, I can't do this. So you can see how the things that these are like a few little disparate ideas that they come together and create a system of thinking that keeps us locked into place where we feel like we need to know all the things before we can start doing anything. So I need to know my entire business plan. I need to know exactly how my email is going to fit into everything. I need to know exactly how to use a chatbot, everything about the chatbot. If I'm going to do a podcast, I need to know everything about the podcast. This is what keeps us from delegating because we feel, or finding people to help us, or looking for assistance, or relying on other people, because we feel like we have to prove that we can do it. And we have this list of things that we need to do that's going to show you that I can prove that I've done this. Now, my intimacy coach, she said to me, and she called me out on this, and it was really good. Miss L, by the way, if anybody is looking for an intimacy coach, Miss L is amazing. Reach out to me. She's absolutely fabulous. But she said, I'm hearing a lot about, like, as she was talking, she said, this is very much about everybody else. It's very much about your husband. It's very much in that direction. Like, what about you? What do you want? What are you trying to do? And I had no idea how to answer that question. I had no idea how to answer that question. And I realized that in business, it is very, very similar because we are so busy trying to prove that we can do something on this checklist that someone else has given us, that if someone actually asks you, what is it that you are actually trying to do? What do you want out of this business? What is going to make you happy in this business? Most of us cannot answer that question. So I want to reflect the question Miss L asked me onto you is, what do you want to get out of your business? Because I don't think it is to prove to other people that you can do it, right? There's something else. There's a reason why you got into your business. Now, one of the most important things about these ideas is that if you grew up in, I'm going to use a really big tangent here, but many of my clients have grown up in families with narcissistic parents or households with abuse in them. And often, for many of you who have grown up in families with narcissistic parents, you are familiar with this idea of making sure that you keep things within the family. You talk about things in the family, lots of stuff. There's family secrets. And you don't really talk about a lot of things outside, and you kind of think your family is normal, and it's totally normal. Like, it's fine that we have to walk on eggshells. It's totally normal. It's fine. It's good. Like, it's not that bad. Other people have it way worse, right? This is really important to sort of to hone in on, even though it doesn't sound like it has something to do with it. It really does, because it was only through a lot of therapy that I realized that what I thought was a totally normal and healthy family dynamic was not that. It was a codependent relationship, right? And I realized I had a lot of work to do to relearn how to be in healthy, non-codependent relationships. I had to do a lot of work to figure that out. And no doubt you have in your life learned many things that you realize you have to unlearn. And I'm telling you this example because I know that in your personal life, you have had something like that where you realized you had to unlearn something. I want you to latch onto that for a brief moment, because the process of unlearning is just as important as the process of learning. And to unlearn this belief system that you need to know all of the things and before you start anything, okay? In order to do that, you have to unlearn this idea that that's how it has to happen. The belief and comfort in this change will come later, but the action has to come first, okay? So the action has to come first, because this is the most important lesson about this podcast, is that though the coping technique of having this list in front of you, that you knew all of the things that you needed to do for a particular activity in your business or in your life, though that served you for many years and it kept you safe, it will not serve you in business. It no longer has value for you in business. In fact, it is what will drive your business into the ground, because it will keep you locked into inaction, because there will always be something else for you to learn, and there will always be something else for you to figure out. And you will never get that feeling that you're looking for. The feeling that you're looking for is that feeling of, I feel like I have it all figured out. Now I can go ahead and move on. That feeling doesn't exist. The feeling that actually exists is getting comfortable with the idea that you don't know what's going on. Getting comfortable with the idea that it's okay to just put one foot in front of the other and to plan a little bit differently than you thought you were supposed to plan. So now, step one. So what do we do to change this? What do we do so that we're not constantly locking ourselves into paralysis by creating an arbitrary set of requirements that have to happen before we can take a certain set of actions, right? So the first thing is commit to just putting one foot in front of the other. Just looking right ahead, right in front of you at the very next step, and just putting one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, right? The next thing that I recommend is, in terms of planning, because you do need to do some planning, pick a time, a day, where you sit and you plan for your year. And your year will be very loosey-goosey. I kind of want to be on some podcasts by the end of the year. I want to have my website done by the end of the year. Just make a loosey-goosey list of the things that you want to have done. Your next 2 quarters, you'll have planned a little bit more detailed. And the next quarter will be very detailed. So what you're doing basically is having an extremely detailed plan for the next 3 months. But then everything else, it's kind of fading off. It's like you'll get it as you do your quarterly meetings with yourself. You will iron out that plan a little bit more. You may not stick to this plan exactly. The purpose of the plan is to give you a direction to put your foot in front of the other. One foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. As you go through this plan, things are going to happen in your business. Surprises, good things and bad things, and you will adapt and pivot. Your plan becomes your guide, in that if you drift too far away, you can use it as a way to get back on track. You will never feel like you don't know where you're going, because you'll always be like, oh, I can always get back on track. In terms of the activities that you need to do within that plan, right? Write your email, write your posts. That is a matter of simply doing the task, which a lot of the other podcast episodes we have can help you with that. But it's about putting the one foot in front of the other and figuring it out as you go, because you don't know what you don't know, and you won't know it until you do the thing and then are like, oh, I didn't know this. Because you're only going to be able to solve for the problems that you can think about. And the thing is that with zero experience or limited experience in whatever new thing it is that you're learning, chances are you're not going to be able to think of the actual problems you're going to face. You're just going to think of the problems that you think you're going to face in your imaginary mind. The real problems that you will face are usually not the problems that you think you're going to face. And that is something to remember as a business owner, is that you're going to anticipate a lot of problems, but the things that you run into are usually not going to be those. So as long as you're sitting here trying to make sure that you've planned for every single contingency, the one that actually gets you is going to be the one you didn't think of. So all of this is going to be a waste of time anyway, because the fact of the matter is the one that gets you is almost always the one you didn't think of. So that time, right, that's not a good use of time. Cross that bridge when you come to it. Okay. The third thing, and this I learned from my dear, dear friend, Katie Gunther, who is the owner of Bella Blue Solutions. She's also my email marketing strategist. She taught me how to get comfortable with sitting in discomfort. That sometimes I'm just going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And I can sit in it, and I can be okay with discomfort and not let it bother me. And that was tough when I first started, but practice, practice, practice. Meditation is amazing for this. Absolutely amazing for this. The other thing that I would strongly recommend, because I can't help it, is therapy. Therapy is just really good for figuring these things out for yourself and figuring out what holds you back, coming up with coping techniques, things like that. If you need help finding a therapist, you can go to Psychology Today. You're also welcome to message me on the business page, and I can help you find a therapist if you are local to Massachusetts or New Hampshire. So the most important thing as we start to wrap this up is that as long as you are sitting and waiting to figure everything out, your business is not going to grow. You're not going to see the results you're looking for. And what you're really doing is pacifying yourself. You're pacifying yourself because action is too scary. And this is a place in which you're comfortable right now. This is a place in which you've always been comfortable, because this is the place that we created for ourselves that is a place of safety. So as long as I'm sitting in this place of safety and I'm planning, everything's okay. But the second I take action, I am in danger. And that's the story that we tell ourselves. And it is really important for us to start using language like that. This is the story that I am telling myself, because it is a choice and we can make different choices. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to jump up and start taking action. But what it does mean is that you're going to start crafting a different narrative. And over time, you on your own, as you craft this different narrative, will start to find opportunities to take action, because you will no longer feel the fear of what happens if. The way that most of us try to approach things like this is we try to brute force our way through it instead of coming at it from the side and addressing some of the root causes and treating ourselves in a gentle way. So for most of us, like, just do the thing. Come on, you can just do it. Just do the email. Oh my God, I need to do the email. You beat yourself up. That's the technique you've used so far to try to spur yourself into action when you are not taking action. 9 times out of 10, that doesn't work. So what I'm offering you is what we talked about in this podcast, which is a different perspective on why you are not taking action, and a redirection for how you might be able to take action. Now, if you really, really, really are ready to take action, then what I want to recommend for you is head over to www.socialstrategysquad.com. Link is in the show notes, and it is also on the live, and or you can go to Manessa.com, socialstrategysquad.com, or you can go to Manessa.com. And I want you to sign up for the Social Strategy Squad. That is my private coaching group. That space has been created very specifically to help business owners with actionable activities that they can use to work through some of these challenging issues. Because one of my superpowers is operationalizing these therapeutic ideas that we learn, from other coaches. One of the most difficult things for me when I was learning from coaches and not coaching myself was that a lot of them would teach you what to do. A lot of them would teach you how to do it, but what they would not teach you is how to operationalize it from your brain onto a piece of paper. How do I really translate this, right? How do I create the action from what I'm thinking and the stuff that I'm learning? And I had been in therapy for 10 to 15 years, and I had been learning and learning and learning and learning, but I had no actions to reinforce the change that I wanted. And for me, because I love business so much, business became the tool that I used to reinforce some of these healthy ideas so that I did not feel so afraid taking action when I didn't necessarily know what was coming next. So what for me and for my clients, what I found works best is simply looking just a few feet ahead and not trying to look further into the distance, because it's really challenging to look at both of them at the same time. If you're trying to look really close ahead and in the distance, you're going to give yourself a headache. So focus just on that very next step and just keep taking the step and trust in the system, which is another reason why I want to recommend the Social Strategy Squad, is because if you don't already have a system, it's really hard to trust in it. Then you feel like you have to create the system first and then trust in it. I've already created the system. So if you want to come and join the squad, the system already exists. You can slide right in, create your business on that model, and then what will happen is that the action will happen on its own, and you will be able to deal with a lot of these things without having to spend a lot of time sitting there thinking your way through it. The actions themselves will help to reprogram your subconscious. So this was honestly something that has been weighing on my mind heavily for a very, very long time. So I'm so excited that I got the opportunity to share this with you today. What I want to recommend for you right now is this: take action on something today, anything at all, anything that you've been holding yourself back on, because simply the act of taking action is going to get you a huge shot of dopamine in your system. And that is going to make you feel more empowered to do whatever that next task is. What I would also recommend is for you to head over to the Apple iTunes store or wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast and leave us a review, because I know that this podcast is going to change lives, and that women all over the country and the world are business owners are looking for a way to reprogram themselves in their own design, the way that they want to, so that they can enjoy their lives doing the things that they love and not feel like they have to conform to whatever someone else's idea of business is. Get this in their feed so that they learn and they see that they can literally run any type of business they want in any way that they want, in the exact lifestyle that they want. But first, they have to be willing to believe in themselves and that they can do it, because I believe in you. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. This was so exciting. I look forward to seeing you at our next live recording of the Stop Shitting All Over Yourself podcast on our Facebook business page. Thanks. Take care. Alrighty. I had no idea how to end that one. Okay. So where did we go? Okay. So let's see. Okay. So that's how I feel now. I love this convo. I really needed the list, but also the priority of each item on the list. And that is a control thing, right? Having that that's about having control, right? Because if you do that, then you know what you're supposed to do and everything's okay, right? The true freedom, and I do this sometimes, is in toss the list and just say, I'm going to go with the flow, right? Just for an hour. For some people, that is not possible initially. It's just really, really hard to do initially because our need for control is so strong. And it comes from a variety of places. That's why I recommend therapy, because like I can only give you my experience and how I navigated my way through it, but all of our situations are different. We know for sure that we've all got like that it's rooted in trauma. So we know that we've all got that in common, but our traumas are different, right? And so the way that we work through them will be different, and the level of comfort, like, so for example, like I know where I am now and I know where I was before, and I know how low I was before. But like I don't and I can empathize with it, but like because I'm not there, I know that it's easier for me to do these things now than it was for me then. And so I think gentleness is the most important thing, is recognizing that you're not trying to get to like exemplified version. What you're really trying to do is simply just take action in the smallest way. Because like I said this in the squad yesterday, my first action that I took, okay, from inaction was literally the tiniest thing ever. This is how paralyzed I had become. I was playing Mario Brothers on the Switch, but it was attached to the TV, and something happened. It froze or whatever. And I was just like, it's not working. I was like, Alex, help me. But I don't know what he was doing. Whatever he was doing, he couldn't help me in that moment. He had headphones on. He was playing a video game with his friends. They were in the middle of a fight, a little, dungeon. I don't know, whatever it was. He couldn't help me in that moment. And so I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And my inner voice was like, Vanessa, get up and just go turn it off and turn it on again. This is something I've known my whole life. I built computers when I was 15, 16. Like, this is not unusual. But I had somehow backed myself into a corner where simply figuring out how to solve that problem seemed too much for me. and that was the moment where I was like, God, I had no idea how bad how bad it had gotten. And I was like, okay. And I remember saying, this isn't going to work. But I still got up petulantly and I picked up the switch and dropped it back in and it worked. That's literally the first thing that I did. That is the first action that I took. I'm here now, but that was the first action that spurred me into action. Doesn't have to be anything big. The importance is the intention, is saying, I am making a choice to do this even though it's uncomfortable, and I'm going to try it because I'm not going to die, right? I literally thought I would die if I had to reset the switch, but I didn't, and I was fine, right? But your brain lies to you, anxiety lies to you, cortisol will lie to you, right? And so it's our responsibility as conscious us to direct our bodies so that we can reprogram it to a place where it doesn't have to feel so scared or so like it needs to be in control, right? Because a lot of times your body is the one that's kind of like saying, you need to be in control, you need to be in control. And your mind is simply doing the things so that your body doesn't feel anxious, right? So if your mind is making the list so that your body doesn't have that feeling of anxiety, then you can train your body to need something different. Okay. Alrighty. I know, it was such bad advice, such bad advice. I saw that and I almost wanted to unfollow him because I thought it was, and Russell Brunson makes a fortune. He's a genius. I think he created ClickFunnels or something. Like, the man knows what he's doing. I'm not saying he's like, but that is such bad advice. It's bad advice on every level. It's bad, and it is really bad advice for women. And it is really, really, really bad advice for chronically ill women. Like, it's just bad, right? But like, how many people are going to see that Insta post from somebody like Russell Brunson, who knows all the things about all the things, and he says ClickFunnels, so clearly he knows what he's doing, right? And they're going to feel like, I'm so tired, I just can't do any more work, there are no more hours. And now you feel like a failure and you feel like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, when really it wasn't that you're not cut out for this. You are cut out for this. You're amazing. You could have so much impact. You know who the problem is? The problem is the dingbats who are giving you the bad advice, right? That's why we need more people giving different pieces of advice, right? I don't think that my advice is the only piece of advice that's out there, but I certainly think my advice and advice of people like me needs to be added to the chorus so that we're not getting single-celled messages that just say, this is the only way to be successful, and if you're not doing that, sucks to be you. Oh my God, absolutely. So like the first one to get to work and the last one to leave, that philosophy. Oh my God, dude, you're so brilliant. That is exactly it, right? The first one to work and the last one to leave. That is a philosophy we all grew up learn about, because that's how you get the promotions. That's how you show that you're serious about your job. You may not even get paid more, but listen, you have to do that. And hey, if you're a woman and you have to, like, oh my God, you have to take care of the kids, or you have to run to school because there's a problem because the dudes don't have to do that, right? Well, you can't really expect me to promote you. You're so unreliable. There you go. Right? And you may be, and probably are, smarter, better, faster than 90% of the people there. But because you had a kid and had to leave to take care of them, you are now being overlooked. It's really common here in Massachusetts. So there's this, Massachusetts has like, there's a culture in Massachusetts of it's very old fashioned in that way. And I think it's coming out of it, but in Massachusetts, it's very much like that. And then there's a lot of old white men running these businesses. And they're very, very masculine oriented in terms of how everything is done. And the women who I know who work in these businesses, because they're my friends and they're my clients, and they are being slowly eaten away. Their self-esteem, I'm watching their self-esteem being eaten away. I'm watching them being made smaller and smaller and smaller, often by people who think that they're helping. Often by people who think that they're like, you're lucky to have a job, right? These are people who they are paying not enough and feel like you should be grateful, right? This is the prevailing attitude in a lot of places. I only know Massachusetts because I live here, but like, there's a lot of places with this kind of attitude. We were raised in that philosophy. So whether people have that attitude now or not, if you're a woman, you were raised in that philosophy, which means that you've brought it with you, unless you've done work to deprogram yourself. And even if you have done work to deprogram yourself, it's going to show up in other places, because I have done the work, it shows up in the bedroom, right? So this is very, very deep. Sex problems aren't sex problems. Business problems aren't business problems. It comes from in here. It's just like that show I shared in the group, Women of Impact show I shared in the group. hold on. So with bikini syndrome. Okay, so they call what they do with pharmaceuticals bikini syndrome. They assume that women are the same physically as men, except for the different parts that are covered by the bikini. So when giving medication dosage, they were really giving women the wrong dosage because we operate completely differently internally. Dude, so you know what else I learned is that I learned that women are more likely to die of a heart attack because our symptoms manifest differently from men, and so we're more likely to be turned away. We are also more likely to be turned away from emergency room as seeking medication or being dismissed as being hysterical. We do not get the same medical care as men. Now, here's the thing. Again, we all know that these are problems, right? Right? And I think this is so important that we keep bringing it up because these things that Sophia shared and that you're sharing these ideas, they go to show how ubiquitous this is and how it's everywhere. So it's not so surprising to think that our philosophies that we have are influenced by all of these things and that we have never bothered to, and I never bothered to do it because it never occurred to me that was something I needed to do, that I needed to look inward at my lessons that I had learned and figure out what I needed to unlearn. What did I need to discard? Oh my God. I read this great article in Psychology Today. It was about, they call it gardening your mind. And they talk about in like thinking of your mind as a garden, right? And just weeding it, right? And I was like, that's such a, I can work with this, right? Because it's such a great analogy, right? Especially for you, Sophia. Think about your mind as a garden, right? And whenever there's a thought that is not right for you, and then you're like, it makes me feel uncomfortable, whatever, weed it. Weed the garden, right? This is brand new. I literally just read this 2 days ago. But that's really what I think we're doing here is we're weeding the garden and replanting the things that we want there, right? It's like this house, right? I bought this house. It's a piece of shit. I love this house so much. But I mean, it's falling apart. We knew it was falling apart when we got it, right? But I love this house. This is my house and we're going to make it work. And we know that it's going to take work and love and stuff that we need to do, but it's we couldn't see what it was that needed to be fixed, right? Then suddenly the shingles fly off and we're like, oh, we got to take care of that. That was the house's way of saying, you need to fix the roof. Your body does the same thing, right? Your body does the same thing. You already know exactly. When I'm saying this, I don't need to tell you how you feel when it happens. You already know what I'm talking about, right? Oftentimes I think I over explain, but I know that the people that you guys, like, I don't need to explain. I say the thing and you're like, oh my God, I know the feeling. Like, I know the feeling. Okay. Cindy, thanks for saying, Cindy mentioned that it happens in the 70s as well. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because that was like, I know I can speak for the 80s and the 90s, and I obviously, I understand that I can speak for the 70s, but it's really helpful when somebody who was in the 70s is like, yes, that is exactly what it was like for us as well. Because I wasn't alive. I mean, I was alive in 77, but I don't think I wasn't really rallying for the business at that time. Come on, everybody, let's do it. Okay, alrighty. So this was awesome. I had so much fun with you guys today. I really wish that we could have stayed outside, but fun fact, it got super cloudy right after I came in. But we're workshopping this space out here, so the plan is to have this is where I'm actually going to be working from in the future. This is the winter studio. This is the summer studio. So we're going to try to get that going. But we're still kind of figuring it out. We also have to figure out what to do with it because we don't really have a basement. So we have to figure out what to do with it when, when the wind comes. Oh yeah. Somebody says they're afraid to do a podcast because of that. I'm guessing that's Dee Dee, right? Because I think you're the one watching it in the squad. Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, right? It keeps you paralyzed from doing the things that you love. I will tell you something. Once you work through some of once you start working through some of these things and start taking these steps, what you're going to find is that fear doesn't control you anymore. So it started for me 5 years ago. I went ziplining and I'm actually going to do it again. I haven't been since, but I'm going to go again. And I'm going to actually go to a ziplining park in Foxwoods and do all of them because I had an epiphany. I've been doing a lot of acupuncture work, a lot of therapy work, a lot of trauma work. Many of the squad members know that I've been working through a lot of stuff and I've come off the other end, right? But I can tell now where it started, right? So when you come out on the other side, you look back and you can see where everything started. And that first step of picking up the thing and dropping it in may not have been 5 years ago that I did the zip line, but shortly after that, I did the zip line. And that was really powerful too, because I was conquering my fears. So anytime you feel afraid of doing something, even if it's something little, whether it's like going and picking up the switch and dropping it in, or ziplining, there's a huge spectrum in there, right? I mean, there's a million. Challenge yourself to do it, right? Like tell yourself, I am safe here, right? That's what I've been saying to myself lately is I am safe here. It is okay. I can do this. I will be okay. The more you challenge your belief systems in that way and you do the things, even with the smallest things, like put on a different color nail polish, like, oh, what do people think? Who cares? Just do it anyway. Walk outside and do it, right? The more you do those things, the more your body starts to learn boldness and the easier it gets to do other things. So now that I'm with, so my intimacy coach, right, that I met with, and she said those things to me, and she actually said, she's like, do you want, she said, do you want to, do you want to stop? Do you want to sit? She's so wonderful. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm good. I was like, let's keep going. I was like, because you reach a point after you've been doing enough of those things. And I found this with so many of my clients as well, right? They reach a point after where they do one scary thing. They do another scary. Laferne, oh my God, Laferne is a great example of this. Laferne did one little scary thing, another little scary thing, and then another little scary thing. And then she left her husband, right? Wow. How amazing, right? She did, and then big, right? Cindy is another great example. Cindy was doing, earlier on, way back in the day, Cindy was struggling with writing posts, right? Struggling with writing posts. And then, she was going over this hump, and then one day we had a training in the squad where she went over the hump, and she's like, oh my God, I suddenly figured out what I need to do. And she went and wrote a huge post on the wall of her group and felt amazing about it. Like, she just conquered the thing. It feels like you're not making any progress for a really long time when you're doing these little, you're like, I just did one little scary thing. I ate a date. I did this, I did that, but it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. You're like, this is not working. But then what happens is that something will come in front of you that at one point in your life you would have thought was so terrifying, you would have just run away screaming and hid under the bed. Instead, you write a post. Instead, you call that you call the people that you were like, would you like me to come give a training, right? You do the bold thing that 1 year ago you or 3 or 4 months ago you would have been too terrified to do. And it happens because all you've been doing is practicing doing little tiny scary things. That's it. So that's my homework for you. Do little tiny scary things that are inconsequential. If you're like, I eat eggplant and it makes me want to vomit, I hate it so much, then try eggplant again. Try, if you're like, oh my God, I can't go outside to the store because I'm afraid I'm going to see someone I know. Okay, go outside and go to the store and then come back home. See what happens, right? Those little things may not seem like they have anything to do with business, but as Miss L says, business problems are not often business problems. They come from somewhere else, all right? This was so much fun today. Oh my God. I'm so glad I did this. So much fun that we did this topic. We have an amazing topic coming up in the next couple of weeks. Not yet, but amazing topic coming up in a couple of weeks where what I'm going to talk about is actually not going to be a podcast. It's going to be the Stop Shitting All Over Yourself. It's going to be a webinar, and it's going to be all about how to charge what you're worth. It's going to be about how to believe in your worth, because one of the things that has become a very big deal for me right now is I am so tired of women quoting me prices that are so low. I cannot tell you how many women have quoted me prices for anything in the last 6 months that I'm hearing the price and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Why are you undervaluing yourself this way? And it has made me realize that we need a training on how to charge what you're worth, how to decide what you're worth. Like, we need concrete operationalization examples. That's going to be a free webinar, and it is going to be coming up in the next couple of months. So keep an eye out for that, because that is going to be a big deal. You can make more money by not doing anything different, just raising your prices. And we're going to talk about how to get the courage and the confidence to raise your prices. Okay, so that's going to be coming up in the next couple of months. Keep an eye out on that. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. I will see you.